Good morning, students and staff. Welcome to our Q&A webinar for WIS Mental Health Week.
Yesterday, we launched WIS Mental Health Week, and our theme this year is Tune In and Connect. Tuning in means being present. It means being aware and paying attention to the present moment. Connecting with others starts with imagining what other people might be feeling and why. Each day this week, we will focus on an element of well-being, and by Friday, we will have covered Tune In, Connect, Active, Learning, and Service. This will help foster our sense of community and build our personal and collective bank of resources for resilience and supporting our mental health.
So before Chinese New Year, we asked you what you wanted to know about mental health. We had a fantastic response, and with the time available, our panel will answer a selection of your questions. So I'm really pleased to introduce our panel to you this morning. So we've got Dr. Scarlett Mattoli, we've got Katie Leung, we've got Julia Byrne and Calvin Leung, and our fantastic students we've got joining us as well this morning.
We have about 40 minutes, so let's get started. First, a question for you. When I hear the words mental health, it makes me think of illness. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree?
And we should have those results soon. Here we go.
These are the results, so over to the panel. First question, what is mental health and can mental illness be fixed?
Thank you so much, Alexandra. It's great to be here today. Good morning, everybody. And I think this is a super first question. And I have to say, personally, I'm glad you all are looking at this week because mental health is a very broad topic. It's not one thing, but it's also not the absence of good health. Yeah, so we have to think of ill health. We have to think of mental health as a broad spectrum of our whole body, our being, our environment, our sense of being able to make it in the world. And it's a concept that they've been talking about since Aristotle and a lot of other great guys before us. Yeah. So can it be fixed? That wouldn't really be the word I'd choose. I'd choose that we want to encourage it. We want to do things to advance it in each individual. And so we have to think of it like all other kinds of health. We do a little bit every day and it can help to keep it in place. But it's not just in your head. It's not just mental. It's about everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next question, what do we mean by grief? How do you cope and how long does it take?
Thanks, Karen. I think this is also a very important question. We've all been experiencing grief and loss in the last few years, more than usual. And I think we've all become a little bit more familiar with what's happening in our lives when something changes. Now there's a standard curve called the change curve. And we look at it in a sense that this maps onto grief and loss, but it happens anytime we do something different. So even just not being able to go to school, not being able to go to our favorite restaurant, it's not just about losing someone. We experience a little bit of grief. We have sometimes a little downturn in energy. It might be sadness, it might be something else. Sometimes we have an uptick in energy. It might be anger, might be excitement. But for the most part, most people can get through. If it's grief and loss, maybe of an important person in our lives, they've moved somewhere, perhaps they've passed. It can take anywhere from a month to 2 months. If it's longer than 2 months, we'd call it complicated grief. But even that's being investigated a little bit more fully now because of everything that's happened in the last 2 years. People can't see their loved ones, and we're not grieving in quite the same way that we were before. But everyone goes through this cycle in different ways. And some people can even go through it in as fast as a day. And that's quite difficult when we're watching other people who are grieving about the same issue and they don't seem to be matching us. So sometimes it can be a little bit different, yeah, for different people. But for the most part, we'd say within 2 months, most people get over a major grief and loss issue. And working through it is an important part and recognizing the pieces to it. Yeah, thanks.
A student commented, I want to speak to someone, but I don't know what to say. What's the best thing to do in this situation?
Julia.
I just did. Hi. Thank you, Hannah. That was a great question and a question that's close to my heart. I'm very, very happy to be here. I think when we're talking about not knowing what to say, I think we've all been there. I think we've all been in a situation where we're just feeling something maybe a bit overwhelming or a bit sad or a bit confused. And sometimes we don't know what word to say to express that. So I think we just start with that. We start with, I feel something in my body that I don't know what it is, but it doesn't feel good, perhaps. So for myself, I'm a psychotherapist and an art therapist and an expressive art therapist. And it's something that I believe very strongly in is the power of the visualization. How do we get to that? Well, we're designed to think in images. If I were to ask you to think about a problem or something that's upsetting you, what do you see? Do you see a word that's flashing across your eyes? Or do you see an image? Do you see a picture of somebody or a particular scene? So I think in this process, I think taking a moment to see what we can see in our mind is a starting point to be able to slowly access the words. I think that our human mind is designed to think in images. Images hold our memories, and our body holds our emotions. So sometimes what I would suggest is maybe doing a little bit of a focusing technique, in a sense, maybe doing a little bit of a visual body scan through your body and just seeing if you can access a particular part of your body that might be feeling tense, or you feel some feelings there. And you could start with that. Okay, in my throat, it feels tight. And that's where we start. Now, I think we have friends we can talk to, but sometimes our friends are not equipped to be able to get to unearth where it's coming from. So if it's really something that's bothering you, I would say you can go to your school counselor, or maybe a counselor or a therapist or somebody who can help you navigate through that, and help put some words to what you're feeling in your body, and to put words to what you're feeling inside of your head, or your feelings. So I think in arts therapy, what we would do is we would start with a very beginning image, or it could be a collage, or it can even be lines to express. We have a concept called low skill, high sensitivity, where you can access what's going on and just be able to put it out, to take it out from inside your head, inside your body, and bring it out so we can begin to look at that together in partnership. So in arts therapy, we're trained to be able to look at things symbolically with you. And our training is to help make sense of what you're putting out there to see. So it's kind of like a mirror. So whatever you would draw out, it then reflects back to you something that you can see and we can see together. All right. Now, you don't have to go to a counselor or therapist to do that. If you can draw and communicate with your own art, that's great. But if it's something that's really touching a seed it's difficult, and you think you might want some support, we are all out there to help you. So our job is to help you put words to what you're feeling inside, because we've all been there. I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you, Julia. I absolutely second what you're saying. I'm a child and family therapist as well. And I also want to add to what Julia is saying. So sometimes when we don't really know what to say, first we have to pick someone that we have a connection with or we feel safe with, to start these conversations. You might want to ask around, if it's a counselor, if it's a therapist,
You might walk through someone's door and say, I don't really know what to say. I don't know where to begin. And then it's also the counselor's responsibility to kind of engage you in conversation. So it's not only your responsibility to tell us exactly what's going on, it's the counselor's responsibility to kind of have to work with you to figure out how to support you as well. So it's a collaborative process. Yeah, so that's all I like to add to this question. Mhm.
And if I could just ask you both, I know that I shared a little bit on the mental health side, but in that first question, I thought it was great. And I think this connects deeply with that first one. I'm just wondering if you guys had anything to add to that, the first or the second question on the what is mental health? And then what about grief? I think with that art therapy, especially, it's so important. Yeah. People have different ways of it.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you going back to that first question because, yeah, mental health. I like to look at it as mental wellness.
Mhm.
It's all a growth. I don't particularly like labels, although sometimes you might need, something to start with, but we don't stay there. We try to work towards mental wellness. And what does that mean? How do we relate to ourselves? How to relate to others? And I think it's really much, everyone's so unique in that. So I think, we all need to use our tools. And I agree with what Katie said for sure. It's, the relationship, if you are to engage in counseling or therapy with somebody, the relationship is more than half the work right there. A safe space to be able to, take our hats off in a sense and be able to be vulnerable in front with somebody and have that empathetic connection. It's mental. I don't like to use the word mental illness. I like to use the word let's navigate toward mental acuity, mental wellness, and what does that mean? We're all changing and growing. We all need to kind of, look and relook at ourselves and revision what it is that we would like in our life, what makes us happy or happier, and how can we adjust things. So we never stay the same. We always have to adjust, and especially this is a golden time for us to appreciate that we have time to relook at our lives. We've got time to go inside and see what it is that we would like to do to make ourselves happy and recreate situations that work for us. So thank you very much, Scarlett.
I'd like to speak on Dr. Mattoli's part about grief. I absolutely agree with her that, it could be any kind of change. One of the questions I noticed was also, how do you cope with it, right? Different people grieve in different ways. Some people grieve alone, some people grieve in a community, some people grieve with others, right? And it's important to figure out what works for you. And, sometimes it's hard to go through things alone, but there's also times that you need to be alone to process certain things. It's important to find a balance that works for you. When you find that your own coping skills or your own coping mechanism isn't really working for you, maybe it's time to reach out to somebody. If it's a friend, or if it's a therapist or a counselor, right? It's okay to process some of these things together. It's okay to miss some of the things that we've lost, and it's okay to talk about it. In terms of, I agree with Julia. I don't really like the term of mental illness because has such a negative connotation to it. But mental health is really important. We have to learn and practice to be okay with our feelings and talk about them. And we can destigmatize the negative part of the mental illness and work towards mental health well-being, right? We all will have some sort of impact with mental health eventually. So it's important to talk about. Okay.
Thanks for that interesting discussion. How does gaming affect your mental health? Is excessive gaming really that bad?
Thanks, Vincent. I think that's the question of our time. With everyone gone online, I think we've all done a little bit of gaming in our spare time, even if it's just, Candy Crush. I think we have to go back to what is that concept of mental health, and it's how do we take care of ourselves. And in some instances, playing a game is a wonderful way. We need, even as adults, about half an hour of free playtime every day. We just have to let our brains have fun. It is actually critical for good mental health. And we want to think of it that way. But what is excessive? Where is that line? Now, I like the discussion that was just going on. Thank you, Katie and Julia, for bringing up that mental illness. Now, we have to think that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders has that name on purpose. It was talking about a deficits model. And so it is difficult for people to move to mental health. But the gaming disorder is something that has been taken very serious in the last few years. And that main DSM diagnosis, it's in a special chapter for research at the moment because it's so serious. They think we actually have to look at this as a new problem. And another one called the International Classification of Disorders has decided to already put it in. You probably heard about that a few years ago. So we know that when we're doing it too much, okay, and what is excessive is probably about 5 steps, okay? We can see people moving towards it and first thinking about it more than usual, thinking about it when they should really be doing something else, taking extreme measures to get to do it, sort of sneaking that phone at nighttime and staying up. And then when we've moved down to the other end of the spectrum, it's about maybe lying and stealing to get hold of it. And at the very end, will we let go of all the important things in our life just to do that? Now, that's kind of our cutoff line for when have we gone too excessive. And I think it's a pretty good one because it lets us know that neurologically, our brain has done something called incentive salience, that this little box, okay, this device with a piece of glass and light behind it, just sending us waves into our eyes or our ears, has somehow literally taken over our reward pathway. Now in teens, it's particularly important because it's a pathway that's still developing. There's not a lot of control there, okay? So it's one that you're practicing getting better at. You may not be yet, so we accept flubs. But it is about what is our best learning now? Well, over the last 2 years where everyone has been online, it's a very difficult place to, where do we put that marker? But we would have to say, if you haven't been outside, if you haven't taken time to look at another human in the face, I'm sure you've got other people in your household, okay? And if you haven't done something physical, this is probably you're doing it excessively, okay? And I know school is online for multiple hours. But the effects are that we start losing contact. Part of our brain needs that, and it's more than just this flat screen. We need 70 with other humans, which makes us feel good. So we actually start losing important neurotransmitters that keep us in a balanced mood, I would say. But I know Katie and Julia have some wonderful things to add here too. What about you guys? What do you think?
Okay, I'll add. Yeah, I 110% agree with everything that you just said. We're with school being online, we already have a good, 8 hours and then homework on top of it online again. And it's no one's fault. It's just the reality that we all have right now. But I think at the same time, I think we've got to put in place the boundaries of what can we do outside of that. Just turning off the computer and doing something else. Put yourself on a routine where you're lifting weights or little dumbbells in your room, or you're doing some squats and sit-ups. Do a little bit of exercise, get the blood moving. If you're able to go out and do a quick bike ride, or just if it feels safe, if you're in an environment to do that, it's crucial just to get fresh air. And actually, I believe in the power of breathing. To just put on some music, something that's calming. It can even be, sounds or birds chirping, or even your favorite song, and just breathe in, hold it, and breathe out, and just breathe with the music. And it really helps create an inner harmony and a chi inside the body as well. I'm a big believer in the arts, so I think, music every day is essential, and it's just happy. It's a lot of research done on how it builds up the endorphins of our brain, and it's just basically a happy drug. As visual arts, even mindfulness coloring, those coloring books are just sketch, just draw, just make shapes with the music every day. I think it's important to put yourself on some routine where you turn off the computer every day and you have at least 1 to 2 hours of something else, cooking, the arts, and talking, playing a game. I know it's hard during homework and assessments, but anytime you can, please, please do. It's a hardcore rule in my house, and it's something I try to follow myself. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. So our next question, student question, was, I think my gender may be different to that assigned at birth. And they left it there.
I think I can answer that. I work with a lot of youth in transition who are part of the LGBTQ plus community. And in a way, I get that question or comment quite often. What should I do if I feel like my gender is different? It's not an easy question or thing to ponder about, because we are in a society that have very strong heteronormative ways of thinking and functioning. And if that is something that you are feeling, it is important to try to figure it out. What does it mean for you? And it's important to perhaps maybe find a trusting adult to talk to about that as well. And it's also important to find a community of people who are like-minded to also share with. Sometimes when we feel different, when we're different from the majority of people, we can feel very alone. And it's very isolating, and it's very scary as well. Because how come I'm the only one feeling this way? But it's actually not true. I come a lot of youth who share very similar feelings. And, some days I wish you could all meet each other, and they're all talking to me, but it'd be nice if you guys all talk to each other. So it's important to have an open conversation about it and find someone safe that you can feel comfortable to talk about. The more we know, the more we educate ourselves, the more we connect with people, the less scary it becomes. And so if it is what, if it is, it's important to talk about. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So the next student question was quite similar, just in case you have anything in addition to add. So the question was, I'm questioning my sexuality. What advice would you give?
Yeah, that's an interesting one to ponder about too. Homosexuality, depends on what you think of it. There's lots of people with different ways of thinking. Some people think that sexuality is fluid, right? It's very similar to the question above, my answer above. It's important to talk about it, to talk with people who are safe to talk about and who are like-minded. Sexuality is very personal. And I like to think of our lives as we tell a story of the way we tell a story. And what the story we tell ourselves right now at this age may be very different 30, 40 years from now, right? And so, sexuality may be this way at this point, and it may be different. And so, if it's different, if it's, you're questioning, it's okay to question. Sometimes we don't have certainty. We can't just one day wake up and decide that this is where we want to be, right? We can't even decide we want to be where we want to eat the next day. How can we be so certain about certain things, right? So it's okay to question it and find someone safe to talk to. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Our next question is, how can I support a friend that has shared suicidal thoughts, both online and in person?
Thanks, Kimmy. I think this is a really critical question right now that a lot of people are having trouble thinking about. And it does happen frequently. Okay. And we know the great statistic, 50% of the population have at some point thought this is all too big and I wish it would stop. Okay. So let's get comfortable with the fact that it's that things being overwhelming are more common than we give humans credit for. All right. Now, when it spreads into something that's about I don't want to be here, that's a bit different. Okay. We need to think, how much has this person got going on in their mind? Okay. And if it's with a friend, hopefully, a little bit of their background. But a first good place to ask, is say, tell me about it. Tell me what's going on for you. Get them talking about whatever they can talk about and feel comfortable and share a little bit more about what's going on in their head, because we have to understand what place they're at. We have to know first, are they really, really having a plan in their head? Are they really got something specific in mind? Or are they feeling overwhelmed and sort of unsure what to do and really just wish it would stop? Yeah, and I think we've all had that in the last couple of years where we felt that, gosh, I wish Zoom would stop. We're all a bit overwhelmed about certain things in our life, but we can't just stop it. It's the reality. Yeah. So when you've got a friend that tells you something is feeling too big, listen, it's okay. The one thing we cannot do is we cannot inspire someone to have suicidal thoughts. Talking about it is your safest place to go, because 9 times out of 10, when you ask someone, are you really thinking about that? They go, oh, no. They really don't feel that extreme, but the word is a big word and it expresses a big feeling. So it's important to listen to. Yeah. I really think so. But Katie, Julia, you're both working a lot in this area too, I'm sure. What kind of extra results would you add?
I think on my end, yeah, it is a population that we're all seeing. And because the world is a bit crazy right now. And sometimes we just kind of start with that, like here we are in a world that's a bit crazy right now. And again, just having that shared experience together and starting with that. But then I fully agree, trying to figure out where they are, where's the dial, how far is it? Is there an actual plan? Hopefully not, for sure, right? If there is, then I think we need to have a strong intervention. But I'd like to look towards getting them just to start with the overwhelming feelings and trying to get to the seed of what is really overwhelming for them. I actually think working towards a seed of hope in a sense of just what is one reason why you want it, why we could continue? What is one thing to hope for? What is one thing that could be a counter visual of what it is that you're feeling? And I like to start with that and just hold it as a container. Okay, we're going to start with that little seed, and step by step, we're going to grow that together. And that's where the humanistic, person-centered love relationship is absolutely crucial. And a commitment that, nothing will happen between today and next time I see you. It needs to be a firm commitment. We need to work towards that seed of hope.
Thank you, Julia and Dr. Scarlett Mattoli. What I want to add is what if they do have an intention, they do have a plan, and they're going to go after school right now, they're going to go hurt themselves, right? At that point, there's, we weren't able to plant the seed of hope. And so at that point, we have to seek help. We have to call the authorities. We have to get a school counselor. We have to get somebody of an adult or the hospital or the ambulance to help. And so that's really important. And it's okay to do that because you're about to save a life. And it's not easy. It's absolutely the hardest thing to do. But it's important to do that. But if they're just contemplating suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideations, it's important to let you know, I'm there for you. I'm here for you if you want to listen. I'm here for you when you want to talk. And if you want some help, we can go through this together. We can do a Google search on how to, like, therapist best match for you. You could do it together. Okay.
Thank you, Katie. I just want to add a little bit more to what you just said as well. I think be curious, be open to having a conversation with a friend, because you never know what the other person's going through. So just being open and be curious, just to be there and listen to that person is very important to keep the dialogue going. Like Dr. Scarlett said earlier about, it's not a myth, it happens. I think being open to listen to your friend is the best way to support your friend and the person next to us. Yeah.
I can just touch on one point there that Katie mentioned, and I think it is a critical one. Supporting youth is wonderful, but I would sort of echo that sentiment. Do reach out to an adult if you think it's gone beyond. This is more than a chat. Keep them talking and reach out to Nurse Saffron, to Calvin, anyone. Yeah, if you can't reach out to your parents or their parents in the first instance.
Thank you all of you for that important discussion. Our next question is, when feeling low or feeling exam pressure, how do you become and stay motivated?
Okay, yeah, so this is the question that students get a lot. And I think the first thing is to not run away from that feeling, right? And throughout our school life and most of our life, really, there are studies, there are exams, there are tests that's going to come our way. I think don't run away from it, acknowledging that you're probably not alone feeling this. I think your friends might be feeling the same way, your classmates might be feeling the same way, because avoiding work can actually make it worse sometimes, and it's probably more emotionally draining to run away from it. So acknowledging that feeling is very important. I think that would be the first step. And I think second too, one thing that I think students or all of us could try is when we're feeling overwhelmed with our studies and all the work that we have to do, just to visualize yourself starting, right? Imagining, it's like you're sitting on an airplane, on a runway. The plane's there, it's slowly moving, but it's not quite in the air yet, right? So I think imagining and visualizing yourself starting, I think is a good way to kind of calm yourself and brush away the overwhelmed feeling. And even just, imagining yourself starting to study and sitting in front of the desk for 20 minutes. Doesn't have to be long. Starting small, I think that's a big takeaway as well. Putting time limit, setting a schedule, a fixed schedule. Ask yourself, how much can I achieve in the next 2 hours? Instead of asking yourself, can I complete all the tasks that I have to do, right? So starting small, I think that's very important as well. And I think at the end of the day, if you're still feeling overwhelmed, I think reaching out to other people actually helps as well. Just to talk it out with the other person. Here are some of my concerns. Here are some of the things I'm getting stuck in. Can you help? Or can we do this together? Because sometimes other people might give us good input that we never thought about, or ways that we can actually practice and do together. And I think, these tips might help you, stay motivated, even if you're feeling low and stressed. And I wonder if Julia, Katie, or Dr. Scarlett have anything to add to this.
I work with a lot of kids who are, well, I guess in the recent days, it's been lots of exam pressure, right? And I do find a theme going on is a bit of a negative self-talk, self-put down. Things like, oh, I'll never be good enough. I'm never going to achieve. I really, really suck at this. I'm just not good at it. Like those constant negative self-talks is the pressure, the inner voice that comes in. And then that's kind of sucky. Like it's really hard with motivation when you're trying to pump yourself, well, let's do this. And you have this thought, it's like, you suck, right? Like, and so, some of the things we want to think about is like, do we really want to invest our time in this kind of thought and thinking, right? How much time do we want to dwell on, the negative thinking, I'm never going to be able to do this. So if you're never going to be able to do this, then why am I doing this, right? But you're still doing it. So should we still be, playing with the idea, okay, well then maybe we should start changing the way this talks to us, right? Having some sort of self-encouragement. You know what, I can do this. I will do this for 20 minutes. I'm going to give myself a break, but I can do this. right? Changing the idea of the negative self-talk to positive self-talk to help encourage yourself a little bit more. But at the beginning, if it's very difficult to do, maybe get a parent, get a friend. Can you be my cheerleader, right? When I'm feeling pretty crappy, can you say these things to me, right? And I'll say things to you. So hopefully we can push you into more of the motivation state.
And can I just add in there, we did have a question on the Q&A. Thank you so much to the students that have contributed about kind of self-hate and self-talk and what we can do to balance and combat that.
Yeah, that is very common, right? I like to think of, our lives are stories. So we tell a story, a particular story of our life, and we are always under the influence of these stories. So this negative self-talk hangs out with us all the time. We're so used to it. It's like our buddy at the playground, right? But we don't ever sit and question and think, is this even helpful for us? Right? Do we really want to hang out with this friend that's always so negative and always puts me down, right? And we have to think about that when we put an awareness to it. We might, okay, well, maybe I really don't, right? And if I don't, then who else can I invite into a different part of a playground that I want to hang out with that are nice, who are nice to me, right? And how do we do that? How do I find the resources and get people to be on the same page as me?
Thank you, Katie. I agree with that. I also work with a lot of young people with this kind of exam pressure, especially now. And yeah, I think with that is the feeling if I don't do it, then I won't fail. If I just don't do. And so I think working with them to kind of change that mindset somehow, it's like, okay, what degree of passing are we looking at here? Like, are we wanting to pass? Okay, what does that look like? So sometimes people have in their minds, and that might come from them, it might even come from parents, of having to excel at the top echelons throughout, and that kind of pressure is extreme and not healthy for mental wellness. So begin at kind of looking at, okay, what is your mile marker? What it is that you're trying to work towards? And I think starting to visualize, okay, first of all, I need to put myself in a routine. I need to do, as you both have said, a certain amount of work. I need to take a break. Get yourself on a rhythm that works. Go get yourself a hot chocolate and give yourself little treats along the way. I highly agree that you need some people behind you that can help support and be the cheerleader, as you had mentioned, is also important. And also sometimes studying with friends that are wanting to work together in a positive way, and I oftentimes will work with somebody to, in a sense, replace that negativity with a mantra that works for them. And that mantra is something that we actually write out, we might even draw out. And one that has been recently, that's been very kind of life-changing is, I deserve to pass. I deserve to pass. I've put in the hours, I'm trying my best, and I deserve this. And that is something that they look at before they go into exam, or before, just to keep them kind of pumped up and motivated. So positive self mantras, ones that you work towards and ones that feel right, are very, very important. Visualizations and also self-talk that can help combat that negativity and that pressure, that added pressure that then becomes a rat on a wheel that doesn't stop. We need to move it back the other way and breathe and find a different formula.
Julie, I love this idea about the mantra, because I often hear it's a lot of shame and fear of failure, right? I'm going to, embarrass myself. My parents are going to hate me and all those things, right? I'm not going to get into the school I want to. That all shame, the negative way of thinking. And I think the mantra would be great. Like, if we remove shame and hit shame away and say, you know what, I'm doing this for me. Like, I want to achieve it for me and not for anybody else, and not because I'm fearful of failing. I just want to try, right? It's changing the mantra and changing how you feel and you approach it.
I agree with all of the foregoing. It's also important, and just adding to that, Katie, that this is a in positive psychology, there's a best self and a best future self. We also have lots of exercises, and I just how to get motivated and keep motivated. I agree. If you're not in line with all these other ones, you may not be motivated for the exam, but be motivated for your future. You're on the cusp of being an adult. How do you really want to show up past graduation? Go ahead and be there. That's a nice one to own. I think it's so true. Living it like you mean it, now, because tomorrow you're going to be the adult out there actually doing it. And nobody's going to ask you about your grades when you're 30, Yeah. So you may not be motivated, find something to go for in the future. Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
A student poll question. I feel comfortable talking about mental health. Do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree?
And let's just wait for the results to come in.
Agree. So I see 44% of students saying that they agree. They're comfortable talking about mental health. And I think where did we start with this? And I think with all that we've just shared with all of you, I think to start would be, reaching out to the person next to you, really, your friend, a family member, just to start this conversation. What is mental health? What is mental wellness? How are you feeling? How are each other feeling? I think that would be a good start. And I think in school, you can reach out to your tutor as well, because your tutor and yourself have a really good relationship. And you can reach out to your tutor and just have a chat. I'm not feeling too well. What could I do? Can I seek counseling? And maybe your tutor could point you to a next step, and even a teacher. And you always have myself, the counselor, and also Miss Brown. You can always come chat with us, and we can always help. And we can do this together. You don't have to do it by yourself. Yeah. And I wonder, with Miss Brown, you have anything to add to this?
No, I think you've covered that. Yeah, just reach out to any adult. So any person, trusted adult that you feel comfortable talking to, just to take the next step. And as we said, if you don't know what to say, say that. Start with, I really don't know what to say, but this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah. And there are a lot of activities that we can explore and do it together. Yeah, like Julia said earlier, drawing. Maybe you just don't know what to say, but we can draw. Yeah, or maybe you like writing. We can write something together. We can do it together. We can explore it together.
That is all we have time for. On behalf of West Island School, I would like to thank our panel members for generously giving up their time, and thank you, the audience, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of WIS Mental Health Week.